So in this lesson we are continuing with long division, but we're going to focus on polynomials. We're going to start just with these two factors. I want to write out all the factors that are a part of this multiplication problem. So I'm not breaking down the 4's into factors because what we're going to focus on here is what happens with our variables when we start multiplying and dividing. So this term breaks into 4 times x times x, and this term breaks down into 4 times x times x times x. Now I can not break it down any further, but rearrange it so that I have both of the 4's together and the x's together. And again, this is just an organizational thing. So now I want to multiply all of this together, and that gives me 16 x to the 5th. Alright, so I want to make sure that we're relating this to everything we were doing with long division of just numbers. We have a term times another term gives us the product. Okay? And division is just taking that product and dividing it by one of its factors. So let's do that. Let's work this problem backwards with long division. Now, as you are getting used to the long division process with the polynomials, I recommend using graph paper to help you stay organized. I am going to divide 16x to the 5th by 4x squared. Now remember, 4x squared was one of our original factors. Okay, let's do our numbers first and our variables second. I'm going to break this down so that it's still just pretty basic. So 4 goes into 6 4 times. Now, x squared times what will give me x to the 5th. Now let's make sure that we remember our exponent rules. When we multiply like bases, what do we do with the exponents? We add them. Okay, so x squared times x cubed, the bases are the same, both of them are x's. So what is 2 plus 3? 2 plus 3 is 5. So 4 times 4 is 16. X squared times x to the 5th is, x squared times x to the 3rd is x to the 5th, and 16x to the 5th minus 16x to the 5th is 0. Okay? So this is relating what we learned on our long division to what we know about polynomials and their exponent rules and factors. So in this problem, my dividend was the 16x to the 5th. My divisor was 4x squared, the quotient was 4x cubed, and the factors were the 4x squared and the 4x cubed. Alright, so let's go ahead and do the next example. Let's do 2x squared minus 3x minus 9 divided by x minus 3. Now, let's talk about this. This is written differently. It doesn't mean that it changes our process. What we have to do is to decide when we write it in our normal long division way, what goes where. Okay, remember from our organizer, the first term, sorry I can't spell that and talk at the same time, the first term in front of this symbol is the dividend. So that means that goes underneath here. and this is our divisor, so it goes out here. Okay, that's always going to be the way it happens. When you are using this symbol, the first thing goes under the box, the second thing goes outside. Okay. Since this is a binomial being divided into a trinomial, we are actually seeing how many times does this binomial go into this binomial. All right? But to do that, we are only going to focus on the first terms of both of those binomials. What I mean by that is, what do we need to multiply x by to get 2x squared? Well, x times what gives me 2x squared? Well, 1 times a 2 will give me 2, and x times an x gives me an x squared. So 2x is what I put up there. Now notice, I lined up my x to the 1 with my x to the 1 because I'm doing a binomial into a binomial. All right. Follow our process. Once we put the term up here on top, we are going to multiply 2x times x minus 3. Now I'm writing it over here to the side to remind myself when I multiply a monomial by a binomial, I am distributing. So 2x times x is 2x squared, and 2x times negative 3 is a negative 6x. Now the next step of my process is to subtract, but I am going to put parentheses around that binomial when I subtract it. For this reason, I also have to distribute that negative sign. So 2x squared minus 2x squared, those cross each other out. They cancel out. They give me 0. Now, negative x squared minus a negative gives me a plus here. Okay? I'm going to circle that to indicate I've already distributed it. So negative 3x plus 6x gives me a positive 3x. All we're doing here is paying attention to our signs. You have to distribute the negative. Now, the normal process tells me that I now need to bring down my next term. I am bringing down that next term with the sign. And then I repeat the whole thing over. What do I need to multiply x by to get 3x? X times blank equals 3x. Well, I just need to multiply it by 3. So I come up here and I multiply by positive 3. Have to put that sign there because it's a polynomial. Now, next step of the process is I multiply this 3 by the x minus 3, by the divisor. Again, I'm doing this to remind myself that I'm distributing. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 9, or negative 3 is negative 9. The next step of the process is to subtract. Again, I have to pay attention to my sign. 3x minus 3x gives me 0, so those cancel out. And then negative 9 minus a negative 9 gives me a positive. I'm going to circle that negative out there to indicate I've already distributed it. And negative 9 plus 9 is 0. So, notice here that I have my x's lined up and I have my constants lined up. This term right here is at the end of my trinomial, my dividend, so I'm done. So let's go ahead and write our different parts. I'm at the bottom of my page. So I have the dividend is 2x squared minus 3x minus 9. The divisor is x minus 3. My quotient is 2x plus 3. If you need to pause after each one of these to make sure you're seeing where they're coming from, please do. My factors, because My remainder was 0. My factors are x minus 3 and 2x plus 3. That's my divisor and my quotient. All right, let's do another example. Here's our next example. Please note that we did not put parentheses around the dividend and the divisor this time. You've got to get comfortable with the different ways these problems may look. The parentheses don't make the problems here, okay? It's just an organizational thing. So let's go ahead and put this into our box. Now, what goes in the what goes inside the division box? It's going to be the first term in front of the symbol. So let's put our dividend and our divisor in. All right, here we go. So I have my dividend underneath here, and I have my divisor outside. Okay, get rid of those. Okay, so remember, I am focusing. I'm looking at this binomial going into this binomial. To do that, I'm only going to focus on the first terms. So x times what gives me x cubed? Well, x times what gives me x cubed? Well, since we add exponents when we multiply like bases, 1 plus what gives me 3? 1 plus 2. So x times x squared gives me x cubed. Again, notice I have put it over the x squared term. Okay. Let me erase these. All right. Next step of our process is multiplying our x squared times our divisor, x minus 4. Remember, I'm writing it down to remind myself to distribute. So x squared times x is x cubed. X times negative 4 is a negative 4x squared. I may have said that wrong. What I wrote is correct. It's 4x squared. Next step of our process is to subtract the second step, and I'm putting parentheses to remind myself to distribute the negative sign. So x cubed minus x cubed, those are going to cancel each other out. 2x squared minus negative 4x squared minus a negative makes a positive, and I am going to circle that negative to remind myself I've already distributed it. Now, positive 2x squared plus 4x squared is a positive 6x squared. Next step of the process is to bring down the 5x. Actually, bring down the minus 5x. We repeat the process. I'm looking at this binomial into this binomial, focusing on only the first terms. X times what gives me 6x squared? Well, I need to multiply by a 6, and I need to multiply by a second x. So, my answer up here is going to be a plus 6x. Now notice that my x term is over my x term of the dividend. Let me erase these little yellow lines. Alright, so now I'm going to distribute 6x times x minus 4. 6x times x is 6x squared, and 6x times negative 4 is negative 24x. I am going to subtract and put parentheses. 6x minus x squared, they cancel out. Negative 5x minus a negative 24, minus a negative becomes a plus. I'm circling that to remind myself I've already done it. So negative 5 plus 24 is a positive 19x. Okay. Continuing to follow the process, I bring down my next term. Okay, back to the beginning of the process. What do I have to multiply x by to get 19x? I just have to multiply it by 19. Multiply that, 19 times x minus 4 gives me 19x minus, I believe it's 76. Yes, 76. I am going to put parentheses and subtract. So 19 minus 19 cancels each other out. 16 minus a negative 76, that becomes a positive. 16 plus 96 is, let me say that again, 16 plus 76 is a 92. So I have a remainder of 92. Now pay attention here on our quotient. The way we're going to write this with a remainder other than 0 is x squared plus 6x plus 19 plus the remainder goes in the numerator and the divisor is the denominator. So we end up having this fraction that we are tacking on to the end of our quotient. Now, is x minus 4 a factor of our dividend? Well, since we have a remainder other than 0, then no, because the remainder is not equal to 0. Okay? All right. We are going to stop there, and you have homework that is on Wednesdays. Email with questions.